Well, we just love New Zealand, Kathy and I. This is actually our 6th time in New Zealand. There's chairs up here. There's chairs up here. We really have fun here. And every time we come, we get to visit a different, to expand to different places we've seen. Last time we were here, we, of course, did the pilgrimage to your holy land, Hobbiton. And then since then, all my kids have come to Hobbiton. And so we understand your sacred places. But this year, we actually we expanded our repertoire. So we actually went up the Coriander Peninsula. And we went, Captain Cook apparently went there. There's a monument to Captain Cook, right? So those of you who have been there, it is, take my word for it. And it's where he ran aground, I think. And then, and says on the monument, the first thing he said was, "This is better than Aussie." So that's expanded our repertoire. So we'll do 2 sessions with a break, and we'll just rearrange your brain while you're here. But I'll explain how to use some of the tools. We have all kinds of tools and resources. We have a few on the book table, but I'll tell you about some of them as we go along. But I'll tell you a little bit about my story, how I ended up. I mean, I'm a physician, I don't normally, you're not used to seeing a physician doing this kind of stuff. But when I graduated, I actually became an anesthetist. I wanted to put people to sleep. And well, not like a vet, but the reason that anesthesia appealed to me was it was all about control. Control of other people. Control about everything about another person, right? Their blood pressure, their heart rate, like everything. You could control everything, the brain waves, and control surgeons, nurses. It was a fantastic control. It's perfect for a control freak. And another great thing about anesthesia is everyone does what they're told. The drugs work immediately, and you don't have to listen to anyone for more than 10 seconds. Like, it's just the perfect guy specialty. And there's a lot of gadgets. There's just all kinds of gadgets, and I was never good with power tools, so this was a very good substitute for me. And everyone, if you have a syringe in your hand, everyone's quiet after 10 seconds. You just don't, and you can be all warm and fuzzy with them, and you can just, would you like to count backwards? And some people do, some people don't, and you can be all nice and warm and pastoral to them, because in 10 seconds everything's quiet and you can go on and read a magazine or something. So this was perfect for me. But the hospital I worked in was small, and we only did surgery in the morning. So in the afternoon, all the anesthetists became GPs. Well, you can imagine how awkward that was for an anesthetist to be a GP. Because in general practice, you don't control anything. Nobody does what they're told. The treatments take a long time to work, if anyone even bothers to do it. But the biggest problem I had was you had to actually listen to people for more than 10 seconds. So after 10 seconds, I start to drift, unless they're having trouble sleeping. I thought, that I can handle. Lie down, put out the IV, you will sleep. So general practice was very awkward for me. But the most awkward part about general practice was that people came to see me with a different kind of pain, a pain that I knew nothing about. I hadn't been trained in it at all, that I didn't know there were 2 kinds of pain. See, I knew all about physical pain, because what you do for physical pain is you put people to sleep, or you put a needle this long into their back between contractions. What else? But no one told me that there's a second kind of pain. See, there's physical pain and there's emotional pain. Well, emotional pain is more prolonged, more disabling. It's harder to treat, and it's much more common. I didn't know anything about emotions. And the reason was that the school I went to graduate, you had to have a personality extraction. And we were all graduating as machines. We were just dehumanized machines and trained to treat other dehumanized machines. And so it was really awkward for me that people came to see me with emotional problems. Well, you see, I didn't understand emotional problems at all. Primarily because when we graduated, we didn't have feelings. Okay, like feelings were the least important thing in life, because as an anesthetist, we're trained that the goal, everyone's personal goal, is to be pink with a blood pressure, a pulse, and breathing without assistance. That's your goal. And people had trouble with their feelings. I thought, what feelings? You have a blood pressure, you're breathing on your own, you're pink. Like, what else? Like, why are you complaining to me about feelings? There's still a couple of chairs here at the front, too. So this was very awkward for me. And so the people were, and so of course I didn't let on that I had no clue what they were talking about. You know, I stayed professional and all that. But the people, they were struggling with their moods, with their thinking and all that. And so I just started taking interest in it. Like, it was very surprising, but I just felt so sorry for them. I thought, well, they didn't know where to turn, so I thought, well, maybe I could help. And so I started attempting to treat depression, anxiety, mood swings, all these problems that were coming to see me that I didn't know. So I just looked it up in a book. Because, you see, no, they don't, in medical school, psychiatry is considered the least important thing because that's considered the lowest rung of the medical ladder for prestige. In fact, when I started into psychiatry, or into my mental health clinic, I was actually criticized by people in my profession and who said, you know, why would you do that? They actually said, why would you waste your training on that? Isn't that awful? Anyways, so I looked up a book, Depression, you give that, and there's the dose. So I said, here, take that. And they all came back vomiting. Because see, that's your target dose. You start really low, and you have to go up really, I learned later, you have to go up really, really, really slowly. And then they seem to improve. But of course, once they stopped vomiting, they felt so much better. So I thought, so you start low and you work up. So anyways, so people started to actually get better, much to my astonishment. And so then, so I was fascinated by this, and then when, of course, word got around that you could come to my clinic and actually get better for conditions that most people had sort of written themselves off for. And so then people came from all over North America. I'm actually from Canada. And so it took over my life. So I gave up anesthesia, I gave up general practice, and I just did mental health for about 25 years. And so that was, I became very skilled at matching medicines and thinking patterns and seeing people improve from mood disorders, which we'll talk about after the break. That's sort of my special interest. But I was really a little unbalanced because I saw how powerful medications to help recover mood, I saw how powerful people's lives were improved. Like Angie gave the talk, she heard me on Radio Rima. She wasn't even at one of our events. She heard me on the radio, and I'm sure she was wanting to listen to something else when I came on. Like, I just can't imagine she was deliberately looking for me. She was probably looking for music or something pleasant, and I come on talking about depression, but fortunately she didn't click away, and she understood what I was talking about. So I became really skilled with matching medicines to mood. In fact, I found that medicines were so helpful in restoring people's marriages and of course, their moods and their jobs, all these things. I just thought, we should get this in the water supply. I mean, to me, everybody needed this because I had a long waiting list, and I just assumed the entire planet needed this medicine. And so, but you see, the problem is whenever you have a new shiny hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. So I just figured everyone needed pills till proven otherwise, you see. So I was a little out of balance. So a few years after I'm involved in mental health, Kathy and I, my wife Kathy and I, we have a marriage crisis. Well, there's no pill for that. And so we completely fell apart. And so I knew Kathy needed help. And so she was starting to look like this. Okay. And so I said I'd be willing to go with her to the counselor just to be supportive, because I knew she needed help. And so this counselor, he started teaching us about healing of the heart. Well, you know, a heart transformation, because it wasn't a pill issue. He says, no, it's a heart issue. Well, that was all new to me. I didn't know anything about, I remember I didn't know anything about feelings. I don't know how Kathy could stay married to someone who didn't have any feelings. But so this counselor, he talked about changing how you think because of a change of heart. So we learned about heart transplants. And this saved our marriage. And so we learned that to change how you think, you also need a change of heart. It's not, there's no pill for that. And so this was absolutely revolutionary for us. And of course, it saved our marriage. And so since then, we've been teaching other people about this. So we started doing seminars, started writing, doing seminars, and then that got busy. So now we do that all the time. So everything we do is actually online. So we have a website that you're all, of course, welcome to visit if you like, drgrantmullen.com. And we have loads of resources there to help with your personal transformation. So our focus on the website is how to be healthy mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. And there are self-assessment tools there to assess your mental, spiritual, and emotional health. There's lots of free resources. There's lots of, all our videos and books and stuff are on there because we ran out of most of them. So there's only a few on the table there. They're all downloadable too, so you don't have to pay postage if you don't want. And also every Wednesday, we send out a 5-minute video on some personal transformation topic. And so it goes free to our mailing list. So if you want to be on our mailing list, you just fill out one of these little slips, which is on the back table there, or you could just actually do it on the website yourself. So we have all kinds of tools to help with this transformation. So tonight we're just going to touch on a few major issues, but all the rest, like Kathy and I have 20 sessions. Like, we've learned never to do all 20 sessions in one weekend because you get a new medical condition. It's called toxic Mullenism. Then it just rattles in your head, and you can't stop me in your head. We also have, Kathy and I also host transformation events, and so the next one is our marriage week, and we actually do a marriage retreat at a 5-star Caribbean resort. I know, it's fantastic. It's the most fun thing we do all year. And so you're all invited, of course. So mid-November in the Caribbean, 5 mornings with us. If it doesn't transform your life, at least you'll put on weight, okay? And then we do personal ones. So that's what we do. So, but today, in this session, we want to talk about changing how you think, all right? So we need to sort of pay attention to how we think. Now, what determines your success in life? Just think, what determines your success? You know, that's a pretty broad question. What determines your success in life? Well, is it your technical skills or your emotional skills? So just think, technical skills or emotional skills? All right, let's break down to 3 important areas of your life on that criteria. Well, what determines your success at work? Technical skills or emotional skills? Well, if you think in terms of promotion, who gets the promotion? Technical skills or people skills? Well, technical is obviously somewhat important, but it's your people skills. That determines how you're going to ascend as far as management, people skills, or EQ, some people would say. And what determines your success in marriage? Technical skills or people skills? Well, technical has a place. I mean, someone has to manage the bank account. Someone has to take out the rubbish. We call it trash or garbage, but rubbish. But it's your people skills. But what about parenting? Technical people. Well, technical skills are important because, I mean, someone has to remember to feed the baby. You put it on your phone, right, so there's an alarm on your phone. And the head count at the end of the day has to be the same as when you started. So that's technical, but it's your people skills, right? Now, we all know where to learn technical skills. I mean, there's institutions everywhere to learn technical skills. But where do you learn emotional skills, which are more important? Where do you think? Well, your emotional skills are learned, or they're supposed to be learned, in your family of origin, where you started. But, don't put your hand up for this one. How many of you grew up in such an emotionally healthy environment, you want to duplicate that in your adult life? Exactly. Nobody does. Everywhere I go in the world, they go, okay? No, okay? But, so that means if you had a difficult beginning, a poor start, let's say, because everyone comes from a dysfunctional home to some degree, right? I mean, no one comes from a perfect home. So we all have some dysfunction. So if you had a significantly dysfunctional family and you started out without really a lot of training for emotional health, I want to encourage you that you don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to, I mean, it's not a life sentence. You don't have to stay stuck. The key is to recognize that you may have had a poor start, but don't just say, well, those are just the cards I was dealt and I'm just going to be like that forever just because that's our family tradition is to be utterly dysfunctional, okay? No, you don't have to stay that way. So that's why I want to give you some options tonight so that you can move away from that. But you see, some of you were raised in an environment that would probably best be described like that. Don't put your hand up for that, okay? But, just nod in a pastoral way. Yes, that's true. But just don't feel you have to stay that way. And you may look all great on the outside, but we know what's going on inside, okay? So what I want to do is to help you understand how do we change, okay? So we talked about your emotional skills or your emotional well-being determines your success in life. Well, then how do you have better, healthier emotions? Well, your emotions are a direct result of what you're thinking, right? I mean, your emotions are totally dependent on what you're thinking. And your emotions will change depending on what you're thinking. So in the next session, we're going to talk about how your moods change depending on how you're thinking. But we're talking in more broadly in this session about your emotions. Okay? So your emotions are totally dependent on your thinking. So if you want to have healthier emotions, you have to change how you think. Hence the title, Change How You Think. All right? So we want to talk about how do you do that? Well, I'm going to give you a real simple to understand model of how you change how you think. Now, there are three parts to humans. There's your physical self, your spiritual self, and your emotional self. Okay? And each of these three parts have a huge impact on how you think, feel, and relate to others. But there's a real easy way to sort of conceptualize these three parts. Think of it in terms of your hardware, software, and operating system. Okay? So, because if you think of it that way, it's a little easier to manage how do you make the necessary changes. Okay? So in the second session after the break, we're going to talk specifically about hardware. So all three of these areas, your hardware, software, and operating system, have an enormous impact on how you think, which means they have an enormous impact on your emotions and your moods. Okay? So that we want to deconstruct that. So I wrote a book called Emotionally Free, which we've run out of, but you can order it online. And so in this book, this is sort of my textbook, the first third of the book is how to do an assessment of your mental health, which is your hardware. And the second third of the book is how to do an assessment of your operating system, which is your spiritual health. And the last third of the book is how to do an assessment of your personality or of your past, all the things that have happened to you growing up. And so it's how to assess yourself and then what to do about all three circles. Okay? So that's a textbook, so you can order that online. But if we just talk briefly about each one, so that's what my book looks like. But if we talk now about hardware, your hardware is your brain. Okay, that's your hardware. So that's what you're born with. So that's your collection of nerve cells, which gives you thought control, and your IQ, all those kinds of things. And if your nerve cells are working properly and talking to each other correctly, then you have thought control. But if your nerve cells aren't working correctly, you lose thought control. And so a mood disorder, which we'll talk about after the break, is a loss of thought control. Okay, that's all a mood disorder is. We'll talk about that a lot. And so your nerve cells are responsible for your hardware functioning. So if your hardware is working well, then you have thought control. But if your hardware is not working well, you lose thought control and lose mood control. It's very, very significant. It has a very big impact on your life and on society, and we'll talk about. But we know that 10 to 20% of the population has a mood disorder. 80% are undiagnosed, untreated, because they're mild. But these are nerve cell malfunctions where the nerve cells don't communicate quite well enough, and so you lose thought control, which means you lose control of your moods and what you're thinking. Okay, so this is an important issue, but we'll talk more about that in the next session. And so that affects 20% of the population, which is a very, very large number. But let's talk about what affects all of us, okay? So then we switch to the personality circle or your software, okay? So your software. And so what that refers to, your software refers to the patterns of thinking and the behavior that you have learned or that have been programmed into you. That's why we call it software, because the software is programming the hardware. Okay, so the hardware is sort of your physical, it's the box you were born with, but then it's programmed by your life events. So that's your software programming. That has a huge impact on how you think, feel, and relate to other people. And so where do you think you're programmed? Or where do you think your personality is programmed? Same answer as earlier. Your family of origin. Your family of origin determines your programming. The way that they treated you and the environment you grew up shapes your personality, right? So depending how they treated you, how they spoke to you, will determine how you see yourself, right? It means your family environment determines how you see yourself, your self-image, self-conception, self-identity. And so you get programmed positively or negatively, or a mixture of both, okay? And you see, it's very uncommon to be born with negative thinking. Negative thinking is something you learn and practice because of the environment you were raised in. So if you were raised in a very negative or fearful home, being negative and fearful will be that's your family tradition. In our family, we're always afraid. Okay, so at Christmas time, you always get together and you know what that looks like. So that's your programming. Now, some people have said to me, oh, I don't have any baggage. You know, my family was fine. It was good enough. I don't have any of those problems. But you know, there's a very easy test to tell if you have baggage. So baggage, what I refer to as baggage is your programming that may not be all that healthy. Okay? How to tell if you have any unhealthy programming. Here's a real simple test. Do you ever overreact to anything ever? Do you ever overreact to anything ever? Well, if that has ever happened to you, you've got baggage. That means you weren't raised in a perfect home. You see, well, overreaction is real simple. Overreacting is just something happens in front of you that someone right beside you will say, that's nothing, but you overreact because it's reminding you of something really painful in your past. Or you wouldn't be overreacting, right? That's why two people have the same experience. One will overreact, the other person wouldn't care at all. It's because they don't have the same past. So an overreaction means that there's something in your past that's painful that this is triggering. So that's baggage, okay? So the easiest way to understand baggage is to think of it this way. Baggage shapes your personality, but baggage contains the events of your past, all the things that have ever happened to you, your history, but more important than the events are the conclusions you made about those events. The interpretation of the event is far more important than the event. And long after the event may be forgotten, the interpretation stays with you. For example, let me just give you a real simple example. You have two kids who are playing on a pitch, and it's just a house league game, and neither father shows up to watch the boys play. Well, one boy won't bother him at all because he knows that his father could be stuck in traffic or he was away on a business trip. In other words, it was within his expectations, so it's no big shock. So he didn't care at all. The other boy, it was a big deal because that was his father's visitation because the parents are separated and it was his birthday and there was a whole lot of significance attached to the father showing up and he doesn't show up. So for him, that's very, very scarring, very painful. Rejection, abandonment, all kinds of emotions are triggered. So for him, it's very scarring. For the other, they have the identical experience, but very different interpretations. One, it's insignificant. The other is he feels abandoned, rejected. Like he starts to believe a lot of lies about himself. I'm not worthy of love. Love is conditional. You know, really damaging things. Okay, so you see, that's how baggage forms. There's an event, but it's the interpretation that really is what hurts. Okay, and years later, you can forget the event, but the interpretation, in other words, I'm unlovable, no one will ever love me, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, all that kind of stuff stays with you. So all those things that the memory and the conclusion are stored in your baggage. Okay, so that's what baggage looks like. And baggage can be small or big depending on what you've lived through. There's a lot of space between your ears for baggage. Okay, so the more baggage you have, then the more it will affect how you think, feel, and relate to others. Okay, so it has a big, big impact on relationships. Now, many of you would say, well, actually, you know, really, the truth of the matter, I know some of you would say, well, I just don't have that kind of baggage, but really, think of it this way. We're all struggling with something. I mean, we're all struggling with something. No one came from a perfect home. No one had a completely stress-free life. We've all struggled at some point. You know, I mean, just think of it this way. I asked this to a group of men I was speaking to on Saturday. I said, just how many of you at some point in your life thought you were a loser? Well, yeah, I mean, we all have at some point in our life thought we were losers, okay? So that's all part of scarring events from our past. Now, you know, if you think of what goes into your baggage, this is, if we take the lid off your baggage, this is what it looks like, okay? It's a very busy, nasty place because your baggage has all those memories, but it has all those negative interpretation or lies you believed about yourself from the things that happened. Like if you were bullied, your self-esteem would really drop. If your parents treated you poorly, that would affect your self-esteem, self-confidence. If people criticized your appearance, then your self-image would drop. And all those nasty things that happened to you, especially as a child, they just get stuffed in your baggage. You say, oh, I can handle it, I can handle it. But it doesn't matter how old you are. if you haven't ever dealt with your past and all the nasty things you believe about yourself, you don't outgrow baggage. You can outgrow the memory, but you don't outgrow those lies that you believed about yourself. Because you can be, a very mature, successful adult, but the baggage doesn't leave. It follows you around. And your baggage will bite you if you haven't dealt with it. Okay? Things will happen and you will overreact and the pain will come out. And you see, there's someone who just hasn't really dealt with his baggage. And so he's coming to our marriage seminar this November in the Dominican Republic. And, what happens when you take your baggage to work? You see, I know corporations, they just say, no, you leave your personal problems at home. How likely is that? Well, impossible, right? We all take we take ourselves to work. That's the problem, okay? And so, in that setting right there, how do you think how productive would that committee be? Have you been on that committee? Yes, because remember, you interpret everything that is said at the committee, you interpret through your baggage, and everything you say is filtered by your baggage, and everyone's defensive, and no one's being honest, there'll be no creative thinking, everyone's just protecting themselves, okay? So this is, baggage is a big problem at work. But also, baggage affects your productivity massively, because baggage is really distracting. Because if you're busy, you're trying to do a task at work, but you're stewing about people, I don't know that I'm appreciated here. Why did he say that? I'm not sure he likes me. And then you've got a problem going on at home, and there's all kinds of things swirling in your mind. It's very hard to keep your mind on your work when all this is going on in the background. Okay, so baggage is not silent. So we might just say, oh no, it's all in the past. Well, no, it's actually in front of your face. You just don't realize it. And baggage is very isolating. It separates people. It blocks relationships. Because if you have a really low self-esteem, you're not going to let anyone close to you. Because if you let them close to you, they might find out what you're really like. And if you don't like yourself, you don't want anyone close. So this is a huge problem with relationships, especially marriage. But if you haven't dealt with your baggage, it really looks like this. And you could just say, well, I'm a grown-up now. It just really is not my problem. That's all in the past. I've forgotten it. It has no effect on me at all. Well, all you've done is just covered it up, and you just think, oh, this is very manageable. But if you have baggage, there's a button on your baggage, like more than one. And someone's going to hit your button. It could be at work, but where is it most likely going to be hit? At home, that's right. So that's why you need to come to our marriage event. Because at a Caribbean resort, it's just easier to get rid of your baggage. So what do you do about baggage? Okay, because we all have it. I mean, we all have it. We all have painful events, and we've all believed lies about ourselves that have really damaged our self-esteem, self-confidence, and interfering with our relationships, right? We all have. So how can you become unstuck? Because we've talked about hardware, but you see, you can have great, great hardware and tremendous potential because you're just a really smart person. You've just been born with all the greatest mental attributes possible. You've won the genetic lottery. And if you have bad software, I mean, how good is great hardware with bad software? I'm sure you've got great box, bad software. How well does it perform? Well, it doesn't, okay? You just want to pitch it out the window. I know we've all had that feeling. So if you can have tremendous genetic potential, but if you have a lot of baggage and bad programming from a painful past, you're not really going anywhere. So that's why, if you want to change how you think, you deal with your hardware, which is the next session, but you have to undo bad programming. So how do you undo bad programming? You can't just reboot. Okay? That's why we have counselors. This is what I looked like the first time I went to a counselor. Okay? So that's what counselors are for. And we have them here, like they're available. Okay, so counselors can help you undo the programming. If you recognize yourself in any of my descriptions, don't put up with that. Don't say, well, I can manage it, because I showed you the picture. If you have buttons, someone's going to find it, and it's probably the person you're married to, and if it's not them, it's your kids, and if it's not them, it's at work, okay? Your button will get pressed. It's a trap. Now, then the third circle is your spirit, okay? So your spirit is your operating system. Now, your operating system is fundamental to the operation of your computer, right? Because you can have tremendous hardware, fantastic software, but if your operating system is glitchy, how far are you going to get? It's impossible, right? So your operating system is absolutely critical to the operation of your computer. So same with us individually. Your operating system is essential if you're going to have successful, if you're going to think right, and it has enormous impact on how you think, feel, and relate to others. Okay? So your operating system is critical. So think of it this way. Your operating system, or your spirit, is your moral compass. It's your rudder in life. Okay? It's the part of you that actually gives you the reason to wake up, or it gives you your why. Okay? That's the purpose of your spirit. And so it gives you your sense of meaning. You know, why am I here? And do I really make a difference in life? It's your connection to a bigger purpose, that your life has more purpose than just go to work, come home, go to work, come home. Okay, so that's why your spirit is so important. It also is the part of you that gives you a sense of hope and purpose. And that you're part of a bigger picture. Okay, so that's why it's incredibly important, because if your operating system has to be working right if your programming and your hardware is going to work. So you have to have a healthy spirit if anything else is going to work. Okay, so your spirit needs to be healthy if you're going to access all the potential of your hardware and all the potential of your software. Okay, so that's why it's absolutely critical that you're made that way. And you see, your spirit is not like your tonsils or your appendix. Okay, it's not the kind of thing that you can live without. I mean, you can ignore it, but you can't live without it. But to ignore it is like walking around on one leg and saying, oh, this is good enough. So yes, you won't die, but you're not going to be successful, or you're not going to reach your potential. You see? In fact, in all these areas, you know, you can limp along with problems in these three areas. I mean, we all have. But if you really want to be a success and reach your potential, if you make the necessary adjustments in those three areas, you can soar. Because you have no idea what your potential is. You have no idea. And too many of us settle with low expectations because of problems with the hardware, software, operating system, which we just put up with. So what I'm trying to challenge you tonight is don't put up with that. You don't have to live that way. Okay, so then what are the characteristics of a healthy spirit? So here's how you do your assessment. So in the next session, I'll tell you how to assess your hardware. The software we've just talked about, because your baggage you believe lies about yourself. But how do you assess, do I have a healthy spirit? Okay, because that's sort of an intangible. Well, here's a very easy way to tell if you have a healthy spirit. A healthy spirit is loving, joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, generous, trustworthy, gentle, and self-controlled. Now, compare yourself. Ouch. Ouch. Okay? That's a long list. Now, where do you think that list came from? The person who made the spirit. Okay? This is in the Bible. Okay? So God gave us this list saying, this is what a healthy spirit looks like. Are you interested? Well, yes. And in fact, it really shouldn't come as any big surprise that God would actually know what a healthy spirit looks like, because it's in the owner's manual, okay? So if you want to make something work right, you look in the owner's manual. And so that's why I want to challenge you, that if you don't have those characteristics, then maybe you need a tune-up with your spirit or your operating system, okay? So there's just so much you can do to improve your function in all those three areas. And then that will transform how you think, feel, and relate to other people. Okay? But it's all a matter of changing how you think. So what I found in my life is that I felt the only way I could ever come close to that list was in my relationship with God. And so I just figured He knows the most about healthy spirit, so it's best if I get my information from Him. So that's what happened to me. So I turned to Him, and that corrected my spirit problem. And then on top of that, you know, I do the best I can with my hardware, and then I've had my programming changed, because after we had a marriage crisis, I realized I had a programming problem, and Kathy would try to reboot me regularly. And so so I dealt with those three areas. And so that's why I want to challenge you that the key to changing how you think is in those three circles. You see, if you want to change how you think, and if you want to actually achieve your potential, then you need to first address your hardware, which we'll do in the next session, how you can actually assess how your hardware is doing. And then software. Do I ever overreact? Do I believe a lot of lies about myself? Do I have a self-esteem problem, self-confidence problem? You know, what was my family like growing up, and have I ever dealt with all of that? Okay, those are all very important questions to ask yourself and take that to a counselor. And then operating system, if you don't have a healthy spirit, then one, God's waiting to help you with that. And two, there are pastors, there are counselors, there are a lot of people who could help you move in that direction. But if you address all those three parts, this is what you're going to look like. So I hope that is something that would be appealing. So you may have come in tonight saying, I know people who need this. But you might be saying now, that might be me, okay? But, I mean, we're all in this together, right? I mean, there's nobody on the, I mean, Jesus was the only one on the planet who didn't have a problem in any of these circles, okay? We all do. We all have areas of malfunction in those three circles where we could actually do better. So that's what I want to encourage you is, don't stay stuck. I mean, that's my bottom line. Don't stay stuck. Don't settle. Don't settle for, well, this is good enough, or this is as good as it could possibly get. Okay, don't settle. There's room for improvement in all three areas, probably. Okay? So that's my challenge to you before the break is, this is a big challenge. Assess yourself in all those three areas. So, but after the break, I want to walk you through how to do a mental health assessment, and I'm just going to tell you everything you need to know about psychiatry in less than an hour. Now, so you skeptics are going to say, how can you drag it out that long? Okay? So then you'll be able to, after that, you'll be able to assess all your friends and relatives, which is just particularly helpful at Christmas time. In fact, we tell people that all our resources make great Christmas gifts. Because at Christmas, after the seminar, you'll know what's wrong with all your relatives, and you buy the appropriate DVD for them. So on Christmas morning, the opening says, oh, they will thank you that, yes, I do have a problem with rejection. Thank you for helping me with that. So there's all kinds of great stocking stuffers there.